Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shadowproof YouTube. Welcome. Here for another conversation. But before we get going, I just want to take a moment to encourage you to subscribe to the channel. You'll get alerts when we post new content. You'll know when we're having conversations like this one. And then also become a subscriber. Go to thedissenter.org, get regular updates on whistleblower stories, as well as the latest developments on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's case. With that out of the way, let's get to today's conversation. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, John Kiriakou, who is a CIA whistleblower. He has his own newsletter, which I think is just johnkiriakou.substack.com. that you can go subscribe. You call it Loud and Clear.
Loud and Clear with John Kiriakou. Yes.
Yep. And that goes back to what you did with Paul Wright. And I used to be a regular on your show. And also,
right.
And also you're a contributor to Consortium News.
Mm-hmm.
And so welcome back.
Thank you.
We've been doing these conversations on developments with Donald Trump. Unfortunately, I didn't get one in with Joe Biden, but frankly, I found it to be kind of lame. Like the news was trying to squeeze something out of nothing. Although there is a little detail that I will ask you about that I find somewhat fascinating. But now we're talking about, we're talking about this. So I'll just go ahead and let this local news broadcast do the work of setting it up.
Classified documents are making headlines, from former President Donald Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence to sitting President Joe Biden. But it's not a unique problem for high-ranking government leaders. In fact, it goes all the way back to Jimmy Carter's presidency. In a new report, an anonymous source tells the Associated Press that former officials turn over classified information they found several times a year. In fact, one source says Carter once found classified materials at his home in Plains and turned them over to the National Archives. President Carter himself actually created the Presidential Records Act of 1978 just 3 years before he left office. That act namely changed legal ownership of the official records of the president from private to public, and it set up a new structure for how presidents must manage records from their administrations. It didn't go into effect for Carter's own presidency, but former President Carter still invited federal archivists to help him organize his records before they were sent to his presidential library right here in Atlanta.
Right. And then now we're hearing that the National Archives has sent a letter to just about every representative of former presidential administrations and said, if you got any records, just let us know. We'd really like to have them back.
Yes. We've really entered the absurd. The big issue here, and I know that you agree with me on this, the big issue here is the overuse, the misuse of the unconstitutionally vague Espionage Act. In my own case, I was charged with espionage back in 2012. In my own case, my judge said that espionage, that she would not respect precedent, a precedent that was set in the Tom Drake case. And she said that in my case, she was defining espionage as providing national defense information to any person not entitled to receive it. And my attorneys jumped up, and one of them said, "Your Honor, wait, are you saying that a person can accidentally commit espionage?" And she said, "That's exactly what I'm saying." And she looked at me and she said, "Mr. Kiriakou, you either did it or you didn't do it. And I think you did it." Well, guess what? That unconstitutionally broad definition of an unconstitutionally broad law means that Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Mike Pence, and who knows who else are technically guilty of having committed espionage. The way that the Espionage Act is being used today makes them guilty. Now, are they guilty of espionage? Of course not. Should they be prosecuted for espionage? Of course not. But this gives us an opportunity to scrap this terrible law and to rewrite it so that people who are guilty of espionage, people working for our enemies, people working on behalf of foreign governments or foreign powers can be prosecuted, rightfully prosecuted. And whistleblowers and people who accidentally take home a classified document are not subject to this draconian law.
Right. What we are seeing is that the Justice Department has actually created this dilemma in which they find themselves,
Mhm.
where they actually should be following their own practice and indict all of these people who are
Everybody.
being found with
Mhm.
documents.
Yes.
And what we're learning is, in fact, they were wrong to charge all of you,
Mhm.
Reality Winner, anybody else, Stephen Kim, whomever who had
Mhm.
documents that they should have charged them with a misdemeanor of mishandling
Mhm.
classified information. Because then in this situation, it would be fine to look the other way. It would be fine to treat it as just like nothing that anybody should really worry about. But now, just to do a quick accounting of it, we hear that Mike Pence, first he says he doesn't have any documents very confidently, and then documents are found in his possession, and we learn that they actually were briefings from foreign trips that he took as vice president, which, by the way, that's not something to just shrug off, because to me
No.
that's about 50% of the state embassy cables that were published by
Well,
WikiLeaks, which they still refuse to declassify, still treat as like highly sensitive material. I mean,
right.
most of those, half of those are background briefings. That's exactly what
Yeah.
Mike Pence
I
had
would
in his
go so far as
possession.
to say that what Mike Pence has is more serious than what Julian Assange released, because those briefing papers, those briefing um well, they call them briefing books that Mike Pence has, include finished CIA intelligence. For example, psychological profiles of the foreign leaders that he's going to meet with. That's very highly classified. Julian Assange never released anything as highly classified as that. So this is worse than what Julian Assange is being accused of having done.
And then one thing we're seeing in relation to Biden, this is the part of what he did that I think deserves the most attention, is that they found documents they believe he took when he was a senator.
Yeah.
When he was a senator. And you've got senators like Mark Warner and Marco Rubio and others who have to go through all of these procedures
Yeah.
to see documents, scratching their heads trying to figure out what is this? Why did he think he was exempt from the rules?
Kevin, this one worries me. I spent 2 years plus as the senior investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff. And if you're on any committee other than the Intelligence Committee, and Joe Biden, when he was a senator, he was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. If you're on the Foreign Relations Committee and you want to see classified documents, you have to go down to the vaulted area, the vaulted conference room that's managed by the Senate security officer, right? You can't just have classified documents in your office, because your office is not a vaulted area. It's not a secure area. So you cannot have classified documents there. If you wanted to read a briefing or to read international cable traffic, you go down to the office of the Senate security officer, which is underneath the Capitol Rotunda. You make an appointment there. You go down there. They take you into the classified vault, the conference room, and you can read those documents there. You can't walk out with classified documents. Like, you have to make an effort to walk out with classified documents. And if Joe Biden had classified documents from his time as a senator, he tried to take out those documents. This is one of those issues that I think he's going to have to answer for to the American people, and to explain, classified docs from your Senate days, those don't accidentally get into your stuff. He's going to have to explain it.
And what we're hearing also is that emphasis on inadvertently. I'd like to play this clip. I don't have a lot of respect for the person asking this question, but frankly, it doesn't matter. But I want to play to you what John Kirby, who was asked about. He's some official in the Biden administration, and I just want to play what he was saying in response to a question about, particularly, how does this happen? How do documents leave a SCIF, and what should happen to somebody if they take documents?
Is it to walk out of a SCIF with classified material?
Everybody who goes into a SCIF knows what the requirements are to go in, and knows what the requirements are to go out. You can't bring personal devices in, and you certainly can't leave with material unless that material is appropriately secured.
And usually what happens to someone in the chain of command if they do leave with a piece of classified material that they're not supposed to have or that is not secured?
I think if you do it inadvertently, or you do it and you realize you don't have it secured in a locked bag, or you self-report, which is exactly what the president did, self-reported. But you self-report, and you make sure that that you get the material back secured where it belongs, and that you're transparent about it.
Okay, yes and no.
I mean, is it that easy? I mean, I'm thinking of people who are low level, who I really care about, who might find they have a document. How do they convince their superiors that they weren't doing it deliberately?
Well, I think I can shed some light on this. If you walk out of a SCIF and you want to take classified documents with you, there are two ways to do it. You have to put it in an envelope, seal it, mark the classification on the front and back of the envelope, put it in another envelope, seal it again, and then put the address of your home agency on it. And then you carry it with you, and God help you, you better not drop it or lose it or, leave it somewhere, right? Or your agency puts it in it's a leather bag with a double lock on it. And you put it in an envelope and then put the envelope in the leather bag and lock it and take it back to your agency. I've honestly never heard of somebody just walking out of a SCIF with classified documents and just kind of forgetting about it for, 12 years and just finding it in his garage in a box. That doesn't happen in real life. Now, with that said, I want to give you an indication of how things have changed over the years. When I was at the CIA, I sat next to a woman who had an affair with a former senior CIA officer who had become a commentator on CNN. And in the course of, their relationship, pillow talk, she said something to him that was classified. He went on to CNN and he repeated what she had told him. The CIA immediately began an investigation, and they very quickly zeroed right in on her. They called her into security and they asked, "Did you give this information to this guy who then broadcast it on CNN?" She said, "Yes, I did." Right? Now, today, she would be charged with espionage, and she would do, if we look at the Reality Winner case, which is one of the most recent, she would do about 5 years in prison. But what they did with her is they suspended her for 4 weeks without pay, and they put a very strongly worded memo in her file saying that she did this. And that was it. Now, that's how they should have dealt with it. She didn't commit espionage. She did something stupid. Was there any harm to the national security? No, there wasn't. But by God, she'll never do it again because of that punishment. So how did we get, in 20 short years, how did we get from that, this sane approach to the disclosure of classified information, to just wantonly charging everybody with espionage? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm cautiously hopeful that this situation between Biden and Trump and Pence and whoever else happens to come forward, and I think there probably will be others, makes the situation so ridiculous that Congress is forced to take a closer look at reforming the Espionage Act. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse, and we're going to have to charge everybody with espionage.
I mean, in your pool, who has documents next? I mean, should we take Barack Obama? We haven't heard
Without a doubt
from Barack Obama yet, but I imagine he might have a document perhaps on the targeted killing program he perfected just to keep for his own legacy.
Souvenir.
And it turns out it actually shouldn't be released because they were fighting the ACLU or the Center for Constitutional Rights in court, and I'm imagining of something that absurd.
You know, I saw, I think it was in the New York Times yesterday, that Bill Clinton and both Bushes have been cleared, that there's no classified documents in their personal possession. There are no classified documents that are inappropriately housed or stored at their presidential libraries. Nobody said anything about Barack Obama. And so I think you're onto something here. I think probably the next announcement that we hear is, oh my gosh, how did this happen? But Barack Obama has classified documents, whether they're in that storage facility outside of Chicago where they're awaiting the building of his presidential library, or at his $14 million oceanfront mansion on Cape Cod. My guess is that's what we hear next.
Yeah, and just a quick aside from me personally, as a Chicago resident, the construction of his library is a scandal. It was a slap in the face for the whole community on the South Side that had to give up all this property for this gaudy monstrosity that he's going to construct on the lakefront. It's not even going to have documents. It's not even going to be a library. So there's not even any academic contribution that he's.
And that should be the whole point. Yeah. That should be the whole point, is for scholars to be able to go to these presidential libraries and read these documents and use them, in scholarly publications or their PhD dissertations or whatever. They shouldn't be altars to self-promoting greatness.
So before we wrap this up, I have a few quick clips I want to run by you because I think it touches on some aspects of this that I'm really glad someone with a wide platform was able to bring up. So Jon Stewart has this podcast called The Problem that is done by Apple TV Plus, and he just did a conversation that went for about 45 minutes. I found a lot of it pretty fascinating with someone from Columbia University named Matthew Connolly, who has a book that was just released called The Declassification Engine. And he spent like the last 10 years examining why overclassification is such a problem. And I think this is really what more of our conversations should be focused upon. So I just want to get your reaction to a few of these points that came up rather organically. And also I'll just say that I was kind of impressed. I was gratified to learn that somebody who does this, is spending so much time talking about politics and these issues, actually seems very sympathetic and empathetic to what has unfairly happened to Chelsea Manning, reality winner, and Julian Assange, and did get it right. So here, I'm going to play this first clip.
So for an example, when I first started out, I mentioned how it was about 10 years ago, I got together with some colleagues in the statistics department and computer science, and we had this idea, hey, there's all this secrecy, and there are millions of declassified documents, and who knows how many still classified, billions, probably. And we thought, why don't we begin using like these data science tools to get to the bottom of this? Like, let's start figuring out like what is an actual top secret, and what is really something that's already in the public domains, people, things that people should already know. And what we found is that there are lawyers out there, former government lawyers. One of them was the general counsel at the NSA. Another one was the head of major crimes at the Southern District. These lawyers told us that we could get prosecuted under the Espionage Act just for analyzing declassified documents. So it's not just yes, I kid you not.
How in God's name you can be prosecuted for espionage by analyzing declassified information?
That's the theory.
That doesn't make any sense.
If you go to a very fancy law school,
It's got to be a fancy one.
it has to be fancy, and you
Right.
get paid $1,000 an hour, you can come up with all kinds of theories.
He's right. It's called the mosaic concept.
Yep.
It's something that the Soviets came up with in the 1960s, where they believed that if you look at enough unclassified or declassified information, you can put pieces of this mosaic together or puzzle together to come up with a classified program. And so it's something that the United States has long struggled with, but he's absolutely right. If there was some prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, or more likely in the Eastern District of Virginia, who wanted to make a name for himself, sure, I could see a professor being charged with espionage for looking at unclassified or declassified information. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was looking at something from the Information Security Oversight. It's the ISOO
Yeah.
that is in charge of doing these reports annually and examining the classification system. They're supposed to do some oversight, and it's a really hard job that they have because they just don't really have much power over what the executive branch does and the choices that these agencies make. But I noticed that even they were, and this is wild to me, they were suggesting that controlled unclassified information, or they say CUI, which isn't secret, it's not top secret,
No.
but controlled unclassified information is not covered by the insider threat program,
Yes.
and that they should expand it so that they have are trying to track and monitor any threats of people like taking controlled unclassified information, which
Right.
seems just it's
No.
like just this metastasization of this
That's the
getting
word
worse
for
and
it.
worse.
Yeah, that's the word for it. In the intelligence community, that information is called SBU, sensitive but unclassified.
Okay,
It's
this is a
not
new
a-
terms. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a classification, it's a control. So things that have SBU on them are like a training manual for how to clean a gun, right? Or the Department of Commerce's trade numbers that are going to come out in 3 days. Those are sensitive but unclassified. They have nothing to do with sources and methods. They may potentially, possibly cause a little bit of embarrassment if they were to leak, but they are not classified. And to include information like that under the Espionage Act would be to add an entire layer of federal employees underneath the Espionage Act's auspices. People who, for example, people at the Office of Personnel Management. Okay, nobody at the Office of Personnel Management has access to classified information. They don't need access to classified information. So everything that they do, because it's personnel based, it's sensitive but unclassified. Well, let's say, you're a really hard worker, you're a branch chief at the Office of Personnel Management, and you need to really finish these personnel updates. So you take some of the files home with you and you accidentally leave them on the subway. What, you're going to be charged with espionage? Come on. This is really entering the realm of the absurd.
Yeah, but it's also like a window into this national secrecy complex and how much of a like psychosis these people have of this need to protect. And I just want to, I know you know this, but I want people who hear us having this conversation or watch us have this conversation recognize what, like, so you can't really tell what this document is, but what I'm going to tell you by pointing out these black bars is that this is the redaction of how much money they're spending to declassify information. You're not even allowed to know how much money the CIA spends on declassification systems, or what NSA spends on declassification systems, or what the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency or the ODNI, the Office of the Director for, you're not allowed to know what they're spending.
That is outrageous, and it's typical and very common. We only have a general idea of what the CIA spends because the former deputy director of national intelligence, Mary Margaret Graham, accidentally let it slip while giving a speech during the Obama administration. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any idea what the budget is. The budget has always been classified.
Yeah. All right. So I got one more clip. I split it into two just for the sake of talking points, but it's about a minute and a half, and then we'll wrap this up. So here.
So in 2012, they said it was over 90 million times. So that's 3 times every second.
3 times every second, somebody is saying, this is classified.
Right. And just the other day, I was looking at a document from the Carter administration. Back in 1977, they were trying to do something about this, impossible problem. And the NSA, the National Security Agency, the people like who spy on everyone and surveil us, they try to get exempted entirely, from the whole system for trying to review and release information. And one argument they made is that—
Was that request classified? Was that a top secret request?
It was in the Carter Library for decades before we had found this document with a bunch of other documents. So the figure they gave is, they said, how are we supposed to declassify stuff? We produce 10,000 secret reports a day. So this is back in 1977. Can you imagine what the volume is now? It's estimated the State Department, even I think it was like 8 or 10 years ago, the State Department's producing 2 billion email a day, right? So how are you going to control and protect all of those secrets?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember I was overseas. I was on an overseas temporary duty with the CIA on the day that classified email was implemented. And I remember the station chief that I was working for saying, we thought things were out of hand already. There's no way to control classified email. And, I've mentioned to you in the past, Kevin, that at the CIA and at NSA and DOD and NSC and so many of these other organizations, literally everything that is produced gets a classification on it, even when it is legitimately unclassified. For example, I would write an email to my wife, who was also a senior CIA officer, and I'd say, do you want to meet for lunch? And I would classify it secret because every CIA employee has classification authority, secret HUM 4-82, which is the actual authority, human intelligence. And she would respond, sure, let's meet in front of the deli at 12. And she would classify her response secret HUM 4-82. Well, it's not secret that I want to meet my wife for lunch. It's not secret that we're going to meet at noon in front of the deli. But that's just how you're taught, how you're trained to do it, where everything is classified. Because they say, look, if you make it unclassified, some malignant force out there, the Russians, the Chinese, whomever, they might be able to put it together and come up with some classified information. As a result, you have billions and billions of classified documents being created every single year with no mechanism to police them or to eventually declassify them.
And just very quickly, and then I'll play the rest of the clip that I have. In your mind, are officials stamping these documents secret because they want their boss or superior to give them attention? That's something that this that Connolly says in this conversation with Jon Stewart, that he believes that there's so many documents that get classified just because that makes them important to the person at the agency.
Oh, without a doubt. Not so much at the CIA because everything's classified anyway, but at some of these lesser agencies, absolutely. Absolutely. It makes you feel like, you're one of the in crowd. You're one of the, the special people that has access. Maybe the guy you sit next to, he doesn't have access. So you're more important than he is. You see that every day.
Yeah, so I found that in fiscal year 2015, this was flagged by the Project on Government Oversight, that they do this thing called classification challenges, which is a natural procedure that is apparently built into some of these agencies. If you're confident that certain information has been classified inappropriately, you have a challenge. And then what they found was nearly half of the classification challenges ended up overturning the initial classification decision of that year. Now it's much lower. Maybe they're doing a better job. I don't know what, but that to me is like quite a statement of how far afield this whole system has gone. And so let's close. I've got John Stewart making what I think is the essential point, and then I'll get your response to it, and then we'll get out of here.
And the crazy part is, it doesn't feel as though journalists have any sense of how to put any of this into context. They own that right now. They are chasing something that they believe is spy versus spy, Trump v. Biden, when they're not looking at the broader absurdity of the entire national security state.
So true. So completely true. There are very, very few journalists, certainly none in the mainstream that I've encountered, who really have a full appreciation for what this issue is. Yeah. I'm glad that you're doing this, because you understand the problem. The problem isn't who found how many documents in whose garage. The problem is, why are these documents classified in the first place?
Yep. And the problem isn't who is this going to be worse for in the 2024 election.
Exactly.
If Biden apologizes, does that mean that we can still prosecute Trump, or does it mean that Trump doesn't get to use Biden to his benefit to get people to vote for him? And it's the most mind-numbing stupidity for them to go back and forth. And I don't see how you can even try and pull this and make it seem like it's a relevant issue. I just don't think. I have to say this for people who got through this video and go, why do I care about classified documents? That's not anything in my daily life that I have to deal with. That's not anything that I have to worry about when I'm working my job, trying to put food on the table, trying to figure out how to pay my bills and take care of my debts. I understand that completely, and I think that's what's insane. But there was this one comment I read from this low-ranking officer. I'm gonna read this to you and conclude with this, because I found it. This is just a YouTube comment. And normally I would think it's completely insignificant, but I find this to be just like why I believe what we're observing in this country has struck such a nerve. And here, this comes from his name's Tony. And he says, I spent many years in the military, and as a civilian handling classified documents and materials, as a classified document custodian, it was my responsibility to ensure that any document that was under my control was signed for, and when returned, signed back into the filing system. These signatures were required for anyone that removed a document from my control. If that document was not returned within a specified time frame, it was reported and an immediate investigation was conducted. How the hell does this crap happen with the people that we have entrusted with our safety and our protection? Are these people so far above the law that they just don't give a damn? I really empathize with that.
I do too. Yeah, we should put him on the blue ribbon panel to declassify these billions of documents.
Yeah, all of these people. I mean, at this point, I think nearly half of it has to be declassified. But the problem is too that the agencies can't keep up with the amount of information that needs to be declassified now. They just bureaucratically don't have the staff and resources for it. It's not going to be funded by Congress. And then two, they don't want to declassify these materials. And so anyways, if you have like 25 years is up, and let's say all the material in Obama's administration should be declassified, well, then they're going to go through it and try to find a new reason why it should be delayed as far as declassification. Some of that might be administrative, just to cut them a break so they have less volume of material, but some of it's going to be because they don't want us to have certain materials. And so, if that's the case, and you just have officials that are going to just abscond and take off with material for their memoirs or whatever they're going to do with it, or just to keep it in storage, I guess, just like, I don't know. I'm sort of like imagining this like absurdity of like a storage unit on like Pawn Stars, and then you pull up the garage and then you find out that not only are there antiques there, but Joe Biden also has some like documents in his storage unit that has been opened up on this reality show. Anyways, thank you, John. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Maybe you want to take a moment to tell people where they can find your work once again.
Thank you. Thank you. I've moved everything over to Substack. So it's johnkiriakou.substack.com. It's called Loud and Clear with John Kiriakou. Thanks for checking it out.
All right, everyone.